Welcome to the first session of Belonging: Why Church Matters. Over the next 4 weeks, we'll be talking about the importance of the church and how God designed us for a purpose. We're made for more. We're made to live on purpose for a bigger purpose. And so these next 4 sessions will kind of describe that in detail and just help us to learn what it means to be part of the church, not just the church as a whole, but the church, Temple Bible Church, and what that means. In a world of isolation, we often see all around us people continuing to go further and further, deeper and deeper into isolation. They're forced into that in different ways, whether it's through difficulties with family members, struggles in a job, or just feeling like they can't kind of get out of their shell and kind of experience other things or other people and interact in a way that's positive. And so the natural response is to retreat. But the church calls for something different. The church opens up the door for something different, a calling to something different. And that's what we're talking about today. So the church was formed as a result of God's love for the world, and it's displayed through His Son. And because of the sacrifice that His Son made on the cross, that opened up the opportunity for us to be part of His body, to be part of His family. And that's what the church is overall, as a whole, the body of Christ. As well, we can see that we have a connection in a deeper way, in a closer way, to the body of Christ at Temple Bible Church. We are called by God as His people to be part of this ministry, not one individual's ministry, and they communicate that, but as a whole, as a body. And we get to function in different ways. The scriptures talk about in Ephesians, the body as being different members all working together. And so that's what we see as the church. In Ephesians 3, 8 through 12, Paul describes the purpose of the church, and he starts with his kind of commission to the church and to those who need to hear the gospel, both Jews and Gentiles. But then he gets more specific, and he says that we as the body of Christ, we as the church, have the privilege, in verse 10 it says, to reveal God's wisdom. We get to reveal the mysteries of the gospel to a world around us, to one another, to encourage one another, but also to reach out to those around us. So we get to see that, first of all, that we are called to a mission. We are formed on purpose, for a purpose, to display God's love. So even more specifically, we get to be able to see this in a detailed way in our core values at Temple Bible Church. There are 3 main core values that we have. First of all, it's surrender. Secondly, community. And then we have mission. When we think of surrender, we can think of Jesus talking to the disciples in Luke chapter 14, verse 27. And He says, if you're not willing to bear your cross and follow me, then you're not able to be my disciple. So the idea of us identifying with the cross is dying to self, is dying to our own desires and taking on what God desires for us. And oftentimes that leads us to surrender. So surrender leads us into community. And when Jesus spoke as He approached His death, He was speaking to the disciples and encouraging them. And He talks about overcoming the world, that in the world we'll have tribulation, but we can be of good cheer because He has overcome the world. And right after He says that, He starts what is called the high priestly prayer. And He prays this blessing to His Father over His disciples and over future believers. And in that high priestly prayer, He specifically identifies the need for unity. And He calls for the unity of His disciples, the unity of His believers, and for us, the unity of the church. And this is how the world will know. He specifically says at the end of the high priestly prayer, as we function in unity, as we embrace the idea of community, then this will be a window to the world of why we believe and why they can believe, because of the difference that it makes in our lives when we come together in community, all our differences, all our backgrounds, all coming together to love one another. It's an intriguing and an exciting and an enticing thing for the world around us to see. So we have surrender, and then we have community, And lastly, we have mission. And so when we think about mission, it's not just, as a local outreach pastor, I could sit here and just really promote local outreach ministries, which would be great, and we can do that as well. But overall, when we're talking about mission, it's not just missions, but it's the mission that we're on together. And so the idea is found in John. We can look at John 13, 34, and 35, where Jesus says, "This is how you're going to know that you're my disciples, by your love for one another." And so our mission is embodied in our love for one another. And so we can see that embraced also in the Great Commission. Jesus gave the Great Commission in all four Gospels, and he also includes it in Acts, where we're called to go and make disciples and baptizing those from all nations. And so our mission involves loving one another. It involves embracing the call to disciple others. And then specifically here at TBC, some of you may have heard David Richardson, our small groups pastor, say this before. Maybe you've been in training as a leader. And he makes this statement that has stuck with me for a while and kind of comes back around when I think about mission. This is what he says: here at TBC, we are not on a mission for community. We are a community on mission. And so that's the desire for us, is to see our church as a whole, but also our small groups, embrace the idea of mission and what that looks like in your home, in your community, wherever you meet. You actually inspire one another to know Jesus, to embrace this mission together, to disciple one another and disciple others and share the gospel. And then that also leads us to mission. That leads us to do acts of service in our community, to serve in our launch pad, to serve in the junior high program, in college, and all the different opportunities that are out there. And so that leads us to a life of mission. It leads us to a life of sacrifice. And lastly, the Bible describes a new creation. When Paul describes this in 1 Corinthians 3, he gives us this picture of being new, being made new, and that we're set apart by God to embody his purpose. And so instead of trying to insert ourselves and what we desire and our own mission into the body, instead we empty ourselves of our own desires and we embrace what he wants. And that brings unity. That brings us fulfilling these core values of surrender, community, and mission. So as we progress and as maybe you discuss this and get into this study, I hope and pray that you come to understand more deeply what it looks like to be the body of Christ, and then what it looks like to act out lives of surrender, community, and mission together.